I just printed out the PDF that I uploaded for you of the illustration steps. I call this the basic steps. There's another document that I'm going to give you later that has more steps added to this. I consider those the advanced steps. This walks us through steps 1 through 12 in terms of illustrating a project. So you can use this as a guide or a checklist, and you can ask yourself, have I done this or am I doing this? You'll notice that the steps are broken up at this point into 3 categories. The first category is placing your reference image, so that's preparing your file. So I want to show you here in my document that I have that reference image set up. There it is. It's my reference image. It's a blueprint. And you'll notice that it's set up as a template. And I have that little visual indicator right here that describes this as a template. It's not an I. So this is the template and the setup for steps 1 through 4 in that document. Now, the next thing that I would do is to trace on a new layer called my outline layer. And I'm advising you that you trace around the object in red. So this is what the steps 5 through 8 would look like. So you'll notice that I have what's called an outline layer, and the outline layer describes the red lines that capture the values of my portrait. Does that make sense? Now, you'll notice that the 8th step says duplicate this outline layer. And it says duplicate the outline layer and name the new layer LP, which stands for Live Paint. And then once you do that, you're supposed to turn it into a Live Paint group and add all of the fills into those spaces. So in this example, what I want to show you is that this is a Live Paint group. I have filled it with color, but I left the red strokes on. I left the red strokes on. These are the original strokes from my outline layer. So at this point, I have a reference layer, I have an outline layer, and I have a Live Paint layer with the red strokes. But clearly my portrait does not have red lines running through it. I don't want that stuff. So I need to turn those strokes off. So I select my Live Paint group, and I set my strokes to nothing, and they will go away. Does that make sense? So I don't want those strokes. They're not on my portrait. That doesn't make any sense. If I decide to expand my work, I want to make a duplicate of it. Now, why would I want to make a duplicate of my Live Paint group before I expand it? Yeah, exactly. What if I realize after I expanded it, oh my gosh, I have to repaint everything? What a pain in the neck that would be, right? So what I've done, and that's not part of these steps. That's outside of this. So if I finish Live Painting, I'm really happy with what it looks like, and I want to expand it. I want to duplicate my Live Paint layer. And you'll notice that I made a layer, a dupe, and I called it Expanded. This is the one that I selected, and I hit the Expand button. So when I open up this layer, you'll notice that inside of it, it's set up as a group. And I can see the individual little paths as closed shapes. Each one of these are little paths. Okay, now if I go to the previous layer that was a Live Paint group, you'll notice I still see the little asterisk in the bounding box. And if I open up the Live Paint layer, it's still called that. So what I've done here is I've created a structure or a system where I do not destroy, or what's the other word for it? Sorry, I'm blanking out. I'm searching for the word. It's called destructive. I am not working in a destructive manner, meaning that as I'm building this, I'm retaining all of the work that I've created in the event that I ever have to go back. Okay, so I have an outline layer. I spent an hour doing this. Then I worked in Live Paint. I spent 20 minutes doing this. I made a copy of it, and then I expanded it. All of these choices of procedurally duplicating this work and keeping my original steps is there to protect me in the event that I ever have to go back and make a correction. I don't have to do all of this work all over again. So this is an attempt to work in a more intelligent way rather than a destructive way. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so that's why there's a bunch of recommendations in this illustration document to duplicate the work. So that way you have it in the event that you need it. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. So before we move on to another topic outside of life painting, do you have any concerns or questions about the things that we've discussed in the last half hour or so? No? We're good? Okay. So as I mentioned to you, what should you be doing in the next week or so? You should be attempting to capture the values in your portrait. You should be working in steps 1 through 12 on this document that I've given you. Does that make sense? And do the best that you can. So when we come back next week, we might have some lab time actually while we're here, and I might be able to check and see what your work looks like. Or if at any point you want me to look at your work, you can email it to me and I can send you a response back.